Right, so this is the linear functions questions that we're going to go through, some exam questions, and this is a draggable question, so you're just going to drag them in the right place. So the form that we're writing this in is y equals mx plus c. So c is the y-intercept. So the first one, you can see it's a positive 1, the second one is negative 1, and the third one is a positive 1. So the first one that you can drag in is that first one, because that's the only one where the y-intercept is negative 1. So now we're left with these two. So one of the gradients is just 1 and one of the gradients is 2. So the bigger the gradient, the steeper the line. Okay, so if you look at them, one of them, the steeper the line, the bigger the gradient. So the one that's 2 needs to be the steepest line, which you can see is this first one here, which makes sense because it looks like it's going along 1 and then up 2, along 1 and up 2. So this is y equals 2x plus 1, and this would be y equals x plus 1. Right, let's move on to the next question then. So this question, it's worth a couple of marks. The first one, we just have a graph. It tells you here that the line L passes through the 2 points, and from P to T, the distance is going to be 12 units. It wants us to show that the coordinate for P is 0 and then 12, okay? So it's telling us that we have to show that it is 12. So we're going to use the distance formula for this, and then we should get an answer at the end of 12. The distance formula you will be given in your formula booklet, which if we write it here, how it's written in the formula booklet is x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. Okay, so then if we're going to substitute that in, we know the answer is going to be 13 in this case. So when you're labeling them, I'm going to label this one x1, y1, and then this is going to be x2, y2. We already know that this one is 0. So we substitute them in. We're going to have 5 minus 0 squared plus, and then we're going to have 0 minus p squared. Okay, that's going to equal 13. So if we simplify that inside, we're going to just have 5 squared, which is 25. And we're going to just have negative p squared, which is just going to give me p squared. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to square both sides to get rid of that root. So 169 equals 25 plus p squared. You minus 25 from both sides. And we're going to have 144 equals p squared. And then if you square root both sides, we will get 12 equals p. It seems like a lot of work to do for 1 mark, but you already know the answer. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to move on to the next one, which says determine the equation of line L. So we already have the 2 points anyway. So we know the first point is 5 and 0. The second point is 0 and 12. And we need to work out the equation of that line. So the first thing we already know is the y-intercept, okay? So if we're writing y equals mx plus c, we already know the c is 12. Yeah, we know that's going to be 12 over here. So we need to work out the gradient. What is the gradient? It is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we call the gradient m. So if we substitute that in, we've got some zeros to deal with. 12 minus 0 is just 12, and then on the bottom 0 minus I'll write the 0 in, and then in the next one we've got 0 minus 5, so we're going to have 12 over minus 5. So just don't forget to write negative 12 over 5x, and then we're going to add 12. Right, the next question here we are talking about is, it goes on to show you another line, which is line 2, and it just says find the equation of line 2, but if we look, it tells us that the 2 lines are parallel. So when the 2 lines are parallel, we know that the gradient is going to be the same, which we've just worked out in the last question, and now we have a point on the line. So we need to just substitute that in. It's y equals mx plus c. So in this case, y is going to be 4, x is going to be 10. So we're going to have what do we have? 4 equals negative 12 over 5. X is 10, so there from this point. And then we're going to have plus C. So we're doing this so we can actually work out what C is. So 4, excuse me, don't know what happened there. So 4 equals negative 120 over 5 plus C. So 4 equals, so a negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 24. And then if you add 24 to both sides, it gets you 28. So don't forget to write your final answer, which in the y-intercept is going to be plus 28. Right, and then the next question says, hence determine the x-intercept of the line. So the x-intercept of the line is here. So the first thing we're going to notice about the x-intercept is that y is 0, isn't it? It doesn't move anywhere, it doesn't go up or down, it is just 0. So you're going to take your equation and you're going to make that equal 0, and then we're going to solve for x. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 28 from both sides. Negative 28 is negative 12 over 5x. And then I'm going to multiply both sides you can multiply both sides by 5 and then divide it by 12, or you can just multiply that by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 5 over 12, negative 5 over 12. So that will get you x on one side, and then negative 28 times negative 5 over 12. You can put that in the calculator, get you 35 over 3. And then that's your point, 35 over 3 and 0. Okay, right, we're going to go on to the next question. So this question is talking about the gradient of... We've got this rectangle, we've got some points. Rectangles, we know all the sides have, all the angles are 90 degrees. We've got a point in the middle, which is E, which is the midpoint of A to C and B to D. And the first thing it wants us to do is work out the gradient of A to B. So we're going to put that into the formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in this case, it's going to be, depending how you label them, I am going to label this one x1, y1, x2, y2. So 10 minus 4 over 9 minus negative 3. 2 negatives make a positive. So that is going to be left with 6 over 12, which means your answer is going to be a half simplified. Right, then the next question has asked, okay, well, what is the x-coordinate of C? Okay, well, because we're dealing with this rectangle, we know that the distance between D and A and D has got to be the same as C and B. Okay, so if you just look at finding the path, you just repeat. So it only wants the x-coordinate. So if you look at our x-coordinates of A and D, we know that the difference between them is 4 units. So that means the difference between 9 and x is going to be 4 units. So 9 plus 4 is going to give us 13, which means our coordinate is 13 and 2, because we have the 2. Okay, if we move on to the next part of the question, it wants us to work out the distance, the length, of A to B. So we're going to use a distance formula. So again, you're given this in your formula booklet. So it's just a reminder, x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. So label your points again. So this is x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to have in my question, what am I having? I've got negative 3 minus 9 squared plus 4 minus 10 squared. So that's going to leave me with negative 12 squared plus negative 6 squared, which is going to leave us with 144 plus 36. So I'm going to have to go over here. So that means that is going to be the square root of 180. Oh, 80. Sorry, D is 180. It wants it in third form, so I'm going to write it over here. So what is the biggest number that goes into 180? Well, it's 36, and it goes in 5 times. So the square root of 36 is 6, and that's how you write it in third form. Right, and then this next question wants us to determine the point E. Well, E is the midpoint between A and C, or B and D. So we just need to work out what the midpoint is. You can choose your points, completely up to you. So I am going to go ahead and choose the points that I know. So these two. So the midpoint formula, which you're also given, you have to do x1. Let's do that again. Let's get rid of that. So x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. So in this question, I need 9 plus 1 over 2 and 10 plus negative 4 over 2. So that's going to give me 10 over 2, and it's going to give me 6 over 2. So that means my point is 5 and 3. Okay, right, we're going to move on to the next question. This is a draggable question. It's worth 2 marks, and it wants us to put the correct equation in. So let's start with the blue one. So the first thing we notice is that the y-intercept is 3. Okay, so we definitely know that the y-intercept in this question is 3. We also know that it crosses this point here. So I'm going to write the equation of this line. So first, the gradient, you could do rise over run. So that's going to give me 3 over 2x. The y-intercept is 3. But if we look, that equation isn't here. So I might have to do some rearranging. So let's get rid of the fraction because there's no fractions in this question. So I'm going to multiply everything by 2. So that would give you 2y equals 3x plus 6. Again, this isn't here. So I'm going to bring the x over and subtract it. So 2y minus 3x equals 6. So that's going to give us this one. Right, let's go and do the red one now. I'll do this in purple. So first thing we notice is the y-intercept is 6. And then the gradient in this question, you could do rise over run, or you could substitute that in. But if you look, you can see that it's 6 over 6, which is going to be 1, but it's going in a negative direction. Okay, so y equals negative x plus 6. Again, if we look, that's not there. So if I bring the x over by adding it, y plus x equals 6, and that's going to be this second one. So y plus x equals 6. So sometimes you have to rearrange, but it's still the same equation. Right, we're going to move on then to having a little look at this question. So it's all about, we have a robot, it gave us some points, and the first question wants us to determine the distance that the first robot travelled from point A to point B. So this one's not too bad. So you should be able to see here, from A to the wall, it's moved 16 units. From the wall up, it's moved 12 units. From this point to the wall over here, because it goes all the way to 36, it's another 16. And then to go up from 12 to 32, sorry. From 12 to 16 is going to give you 4. So all you've got to do then is just add these together, and your answer is 48. Right, and then we're going to move on to, I think this is the last 2 questions we're going to have a look at. So the next question is a different robot. And the first question says, can we find out the equation from here to here? So the first thing we need to do is work out what the gradient is. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So label it, so x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to do 16 minus 12 all over 32 minus 16, which gives you, if you simplify, a quarter. So that means y equals a quarter x plus c. Then I need to know, where would that have crossed the y-intercept? So you just substitute a point in. So I'm just going to substitute this point in, which is 16 and 12. So y, which is 12, equals a quarter times by 16 plus c. So that's going to give me 12 equals a quarter times 16 is 4. And then if you minus 4 from both sides, that is going to give you 8. So my equation, don't forget to rewrite it. Your gradient is a quarter and your y-intercept is 8. Right, last question. It tells me here that the robot from A to B, the first distance that it travelled here, which is 20, going from A to P, is 20 meters. Now it wants me to find the distance of the whole thing. So I need to take this 20 and I need to add it on to the distance of P to B. So what is the distance of P to B? Okay, I'm going to still label it the same way I have. So the distance is going to be 16 minus 32 squared plus 12 minus 16 squared. So this is the distance formula. So if we work that out, it's going to be the square root of 16 squared plus 4 squared, which if you simplify it, it's 272. And then this answer, don't forget we have to add 20 to that. So you put that in the calculator, the distance